about 7 years ago, I was quite active on Instagram. Not on Instagram at the minute. I've not been on there for a good few years now. I'm working my way back to Instagram. Just bear with. But 7 years ago, I was doing like comics and graphic novels, and I decided I was going to start colouring comics. And I put out an offer to basically help me build up a portfolio. So I had some pretty cool artists got in touch. Actually, I was quite impressed, and I coloured their comics for free. And one of the artists that got in touch was a guy called Richard Barker, and his comic was called The Eggmen, and it was always designed to be a black and white comic, but Richard was quite interested in seeing it in colour. I was quite happy to do it, so I got busy on I was using Photoshop then, coloured it, sent it back, and we had a chat on email. But I set up a blog about colouring comics, did all the other artists, put all their stuff on there, and then stopped doing it. I don't know why, because the whole point of this video is I stumbled across the blog a couple of days ago, and I was like looking at this work. It was like I was looking at somebody else's work. Well, I mean, I don't mean the line art, I mean the colour work. It was like I was just, I couldn't believe I'd done that 7 years ago and stopped doing it. Weird. So I'd like to get back to that, I think, on this channel, but I want to use the vector programs that I've been using, so Affinity, Inkscape, Fresco, and whatever else. So this video is all about colouring Richard's Eggmen comic in Affinity Designer. So I've not done this before. I'm just going to walk you through the way I would have done it on Photoshop, but in the sort of style of Affinity, if that makes sense. So here we go. If you were going to create your own graphic novel or comic, you'd just create your line art on a separate layer. But if you get sent a TIFF file with a white background, you're going to need to remove it so you can colour underneath that work. So on the iPad, on Affinity Designer, we're going to go over to Open, Import Document, navigate down to the document we want. Affinity will open a new document for us. Here's Richard's awesome line work, and we've got a solid white background underneath that line art. So because it's a TIFF file, when it opens, it's going to be grayscale, black and white, and that's actually okay. That's what we need. So let's just put that away. We're going to go over to the pixel persona, and we're going to navigate down to this flood selection. Now, I've been messing around with this already a little bit, so I found that 99% seems to work really well. You might find that yours defaults to 15%. Just make sure you're on 99%, and then select the white space. And then all we're going to do is hit delete, and that should knock out all that white for us. If I just do a long press, I can deselect all that. We can then head back over to the designer persona, and we're going to need to get back into color mode. So hit the three bars. The first option there is convert document, and then on this little, I was going to say drop down, it's actually a drop across, I don't know. Just navigate over to RGB 16. You may want to work in CMYK or whatever you want for your document, but I'm going to use RGB 16 for this one, and then just hit the tick, and then you'll find you've got all your colour back, and we're ready to start our work. So we're going to start by making a selection across the border. So we're going to work from the background, probably the sky, and then work into the foreground, which will be the speech bubbles, and take everything in order. And then we're going to work from the general details to the more specific details. So I'm going to pick up the pen tool, start in this corner, and start making selections on these points. Not worried about the clouds or the speech bubbles that run outside, because we'll get to those as we work our way around the image. and just finish that off. Let's just see what that's done. So that's created a curve layer. So I'm just going to move that underneath the background layer because we want our colour to sit underneath the inks. And then we're going to go to vector flood fill. I'm going to pick a sky colour. Let's just use this blue and fill the whole image. So that's probably the simplest selection we're going to do on the whole project. Now it's going to be a case of going around all these little details, and this is what can take up lots of time, but the end result is definitely worth it. So the pen tool is perfect for doing these nice straight selections, but most of the work you're going to be doing is curves, and for that we're going to use the pencil tool. Now I've got my stabilization set to rope, which gives us a nice piece of rope to run around with our selection, and you can change the length of that rope with this slider here to give you a bit more control or less control depending on how you look at it. That's a bit too much. Let's just bring it down, and what we're going to do is, if I just pick any old line just to show you, let's do these two here. Nice little change in direction. So we're going to go into keep selected, make sure that's on, and also sculpt, because that will mean that when you lift off your pen, you can pick up where you left off and you don't have to continually select on the same go, if you like. So let's just start here and drag our rope around this bit of cloud. Now because it's rope, I can easily change direction and come back on myself. Or I could lift off and pick up the red box and carry on. And when I lift off again, that line will be joined to that line. And because it's in sculpt mode, that curve is all on one layer. Without the sculpt mode selected, every time I lift off and come back on, even though it's connected, it'll be on a different curve line, a different layer. And if there's any lines you're not entirely happy with, like this one here, we can go over to the node tool and just budge it over to exactly where we want it. And that means you can go work fairly quickly. Obviously you'll get better and faster the more you do it, but if you do make a mistake, it's easy to fix. Now, as Affinity Designer can handle pixel as well as vector work, could you colour this comic in the pixel persona? Yes, you can, and in fact it might actually be nearer to the Photoshop experience that I used to do. So let's just quickly run through how you do that. We're going to create a new layer, a new pixel layer. I'm going to call that one flats. And then we're going to move it underneath the background layer because we want it underneath our ink. And then we're going to jump over to the selection tool, and freehand selection will be okay for this one. So we're going to go freehand and new. So I'm just going to run around this speech bubble and make a quick selection. Now, I made a couple of mistakes there. Did I do that on purpose, or is it because I had too much coffee? We'll never know. So what I'm going to do is repair that. If you can just use these this slider here, go from new to subtract, because the bit we want to keep is here. The bit we don't want is outside the line. So I'm just going to draw over that, and that puts that back inside. If you go too far, I've come in there. You can go to add and just add that section in. There's a little bit there. I'm not worried too much about the quality on this because it's just to show you guys what I'm doing. And then we're going to fill it. Now I've selected an off-white colour here so that you can see what it looks like filled, but in a real speech bubble you'd probably use true white. And then we can just deselect our selection. So whether you decide to use the pixel version or the vector version, the principle's the same. Make a selection, drop it underneath your inks layer, and then give it a fill. Now you want to work from the back in the general details, the big selections, and then work your way to the front in the more specific details. I'm going to be using the vector version because this is petrol vectors, not petrol pixels. And we're going to do it on time lapse to keep the video short. And I look a bit like Jesus with my halo around me. So the clouds are all done. There's a bit of overlap onto the grass, but that's okay because we're going to cover the overlap up with the grass. So there you have it. That's how I do comic book colouring flats on the iPad with Affinity Designer. If you found this video helpful, please do give me a like and maybe even, I don't know, subscribe. That'd be great. I'd really help the channel out. If you've got any line art you'd like to see coloured and you want me to make a video out of it, leave me a comment. Leave a comment and say hello. That'd be cool. And don't forget to check out the original blog. I'll leave a link to that in the description. You can check out all the other artists. And I've got to jump back on Instagram and get sort of pick up where I left off with this, because this has been a great video to make, nice little project, and yeah, I really want to do more of this. So my name's Dan and this is Petrol Vectors.